Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Val if you are new here, and today I want to discuss just some tips around the whole topic of under processed hair. So this is something that I feel like is not really discussed in the relaxed hair community as much, and it's definitely something that should be talked about a little bit more because it is something that we've either all have gone through or will go through at some point in our relaxed hair journey. So why not discuss it, tips to prevent it, and also how to correct it. So if you're interested, stay tuned. All right, so let's just jump right in. So what is under processed hair? So under processed hair is basically when you go to relax your hair and you end up with not that straight look that you desired, but you end up with a lot more texture. So it could be kinks, coils, and don't get me wrong, texture is good, but if it's to the point where it's unmanageable, it's matting, it's causing tangles, breakage, single strand knots, then it's a problem. There are two categories in the relaxed hair community. There are ladies who are text-lax, and then there's ladies who have relaxed hair. Text-lax hair is under processing the hair on purpose. So you're leaving more texture behind by either diluting your relaxer with oils or conditioner or not leaving it on long enough. And then there's ladies who are relaxed, maybe with a little bit of texture in their hair or either bone straight. But I do love texture remaining in my relaxed hair. I think that is important. I think it's a healthy way of relaxing. You don't want to relax bone straight, but you do want to leave a little bit of texture behind. Your hair will have more elasticity and it will be stronger just to combat breakage and overall be healthier. So that's what under processed hair is. It's very simple, just a lot of texture remaining in the hair, and that could be a problem if you don't know how to manage it. And my first tip in terms of preventing it from happening in the first place is knowing and picking the right relaxer for your hair type. So there's a ton of relaxers on the market, but it's really important to know the different strengths and to know your hair density, texture, all of that. There's mild, there's normal, and then there's like super or extra strength, right? So if you have coarse, dense hair that does not accept relaxer really well, and you go and use a mild relaxer, chances are that relaxer may not be the right one for you. It could leave a lot of texture behind and you end up under processed. But if you're someone that has fine hair and you use an extra strength relaxer, that can penetrate your hair like this. It's going to process very fast and you could end up being over processed. So it's really important to go with a relaxer that suits your hair's needs. So if you have fine hair, low density, you're going to want to go with something that's mild. Or if you have coarse hair, heavy density, you're going to want to stick with the medium or normal strength relaxer. You could leave it on a little bit longer, or you can go with a super relaxer. And it's really important to stick to what works for you. Relaxers are chemicals. It's not something that you want to experiment with constantly. Once you find something that works for you, stick with it as much as you can. If it is causing issues for you, obviously that's when you want to look into something else. Do your research as always, but try not to deviate too much from the relaxer that works for you. I find that relaxer day is like the foundation of your hair journey, of your hair routine. If relaxer day is messed up, wash day is a problem, styling is a problem, moisturizing, sealing, everything is a problem. So you just want to make sure that you're really consistent when it comes to your relaxer day, because it just has this domino effect on everything else. So tip number 2, I would say, is check the expiry dates on your relaxers. So if you are someone that relaxes at home and you purchase your relaxers at the drugstore or Walmart or the beauty supply store, always check the back of the box, the jar, whatever it is, or ask someone on the floor, a sales rep, cashier, someone, as to when that relaxer actually expires. I know for a fact that ORS does have an expiry date on their relaxers. So here is the ORS Live version. This is the normal strength. You guys know what I use. And on the bottom here, it has an expiry date of 11/24. So this jar is good until November of 2024. That's 2 years from now. I know this jar won't last me a good 2 years, but it's really important to know when they expire. And I know for a fact that my beauty supply store, they tend to put newer products at the back of the shelf. So I remember in September when I purchased a few other ORS jars, I reached for the ones in the front. That could be a reason as to why I was under processed for that relaxer session. So it's really important to know how your beauty supply store works. If they restock and put the newer ones in the back, take the ones from the back, or just ask anyone on the floor and say, you know what, which relaxer is more recent. Because if you're using expired relaxer, that's not going to be as potent and it's going to leave a lot of texture behind. It's not going to get your hair straight enough and it's going to leave you with under processed hair. So always check the expiry date of your relaxers. Tip number 3, I would say, is don't stretch for for too long. And I say this because for me, when I used to stretch past 12 weeks, so 14, 16 weeks, I want to say was my max, I ended up with a lot of under-processed areas, and it was patchy. Like, it was not consistent. It was like in certain areas, and it was crazy. And I said, you know what, never again. My happy place is 10 to 12 weeks. That's what works for me. I've seen some ladies who actually relax around the 8-week mark, and their hair is gorgeous. It's healthy. It looks great. So always do what works for you. Don't go past your threshold. If you know that you get consistent results at a certain time frame, stick with that. Don't just stretch just to stretch. Know your threshold, know your hair. And if you have too much new growth, that could pose a problem, because trying to navigate through all of that new growth in a short amount of time, like during your relaxer session, it could be stressful, it could be a problem, and you may not get to every area properly. It does take time to process, and if you don't leave it on long enough and you relax at home and you rinse it out too quickly, there is a possibility of you having under-processed hair if you don't know what you're doing. So just keep that in mind. All right, so my next tip would be, don't coat your new growth. So for us relaxed ladies, before we actually relax, we need to base our scalp, protect our scalp from the relaxer. It's really, really hard to kind of isolate your scalp without touching your new growth. You got to be extremely precise, and it's difficult. So chances are that oil, that grease is going to touch your new growth, and that could create like a barrier over your new growth, preventing the relaxer from penetrating. So you got to be careful. For me, I know that if I base my scalp the day of a relaxer, chances are I'm going to wind up with way more texture than I actually want. So I know now to base the day before or even 2 days before. That way there's no barrier over my new growth, and it can actually accept the relaxer, and I can get the desired straightness that I want. So I've learned this through trial and error. Always do what works for you. If you're someone that can base your scalp and relax the same day, then by all means keep doing what you're doing. But if you're noticing that you're basing your scalp and you relax the same day, and you're noticing a lot of under-processed hair, try doing it a day or two prior to relaxer day, and hopefully you'll see a difference. Or just be very precise as to how you apply the base. Maybe use like a Q-tip or something, or like an applicator bottle, just to squeeze the oil or the grease so it goes directly onto the scalp and not onto your hair. All right, so next up I would say is, don't leave the relaxer on for too short of a time frame. I know that relaxer day can be stressful, especially if you self-relax. You are at home by yourself. You are trying to figure out, okay, I'm gonna apply this, I'm gonna put the timer on. You're seeing the clock count down. It's just stressful. You're moving frantic, and you want the relaxer in and out of your hair as quickly as possible. And while that is a good thing, because you don't want to leave the relaxer on for too long of a time frame, but then again, you don't want to leave it on for too short of a time frame if your whole desire or plan is to not have a Texlax or textured look. So if you're taking out the relaxer, as soon as you're putting it in, it has no chance to actually break down the bonds, just straighten out your hair. So I would suggest leaving the relaxer on for a time frame that obviously works for your hair type. Every hair type is different. Fine hair is going to be different from coarse hair. So just know the time frame that works for you. I know a lot of ladies who are Texlax, and they apply the relaxer right away, rinse it out. They don't even let it sit. They don't do nothing. They don't smooth. They don't comb. It's just an in and out situation. But if you're someone that wants a straighter look and less texture, you're going to want to have that relaxer sit a little bit longer. So it's not like a 10-minute relaxer session, but more like a 15 to 20 minutes, if that. Smooth your new growth at least once or twice throughout your relaxer session. For me, I like to smooth my relaxer at least twice. In the back, it needs a little bit more care. It's a little bit more rigorous. I use a comb back here. Well, my sister uses a comb in the back just to comb through my new growth because it is stubborn. I use my fingers or my brush to kind of smooth the front. So smoothing my new growth is a must for me. Like, I have to do it. Like, it's just, if I don't do it, it's just going to be a lot of texture remaining in my hair. It just needs that extra step, that extra assistance to get the hair straighter. And it's worked for me. It hasn't caused any scalp issues at all. It all depends on how you're doing it and who's doing it. You don't want to, smooth to the point where it's unbearable and it's causing burning. And then you also don't want to comb your scalp. You want to comb the hair itself and comb it away from your scalp. So implementing some smoothing during your relaxer session, especially for my coarse haired ladies, this will help in terms of just assisting the relaxer, helping it to just break down further, and you will get that desired straightness that you're looking for. So don't double dip into your relaxer. And what is double dipping? So this is something that I've been guilty of, and I have recently corrected it as well. Say for example, it's relaxer day, you have your jar, you have your hair, your previously relaxed hair coated with oils, conditioner, porosity control, grease, Dax, relax, whatever it is. And you have your gloves on and you're dipping into the relaxer and you're applying it to your new growth. You're touching your hair, you're lifting it up, you're moving the twist around, you're going back in, you're applying it to your new growth. Your scalp has oils from basing it the day before or the day of, and you're going back in, you're going back in. There's a problem because those oils can actually dilute and weaken the strength of your relaxer over time. And I've noticed this with me, and since then my sister and I have corrected it. So what we do is we scoop out what we need into like a small little black container, and then we use that amount for our relaxer session. We're not double dipping into it, we're not contaminating it with any kind of oils or product. We're actually just, you know, using what we have. If it's not enough, obviously you scoop out what you need, you add it back. And if I don't use everything that I scooped out, I discard it. I don't put it back into the jar because that's just counterproductive. And that way I know that my next relaxer will be more predictable and I can get that straightness that I'm looking for. So that's something that I've incorporated recently, not to contaminate my relaxer jar, but to just keep everything separate, and that way it doesn't lose its potency, it doesn't lose its strength. Because if you're using a weak relaxer, guess what's gonna happen? You're gonna end up with under-processed hair. Your hair is not gonna take, and it's gonna be a lot more texture remaining in your hair. Okay, quick FYI, you guys, because this is something that just came to mind and I just wanna put it out there in case someone may have experienced this. So I consider my relaxer sessions a little bit long. It's past 20 minutes. So I tend to relax anywhere from about 23 to 25 minutes. That's my happy place. That's what works for my hair and this particular relaxer. But let's say, for example, that you relax, let's say 20 minutes or even 15 minutes. That's your relaxer session time frame. And you incorporate that 5-5-10 rule that I do in my relaxer routine. So that's when you neutralize for 5 minutes, let it sit, neutralize for another 5 minutes, let it sit, and then neutralize again for another 10 minutes. That could cause some kind of under-processedness to occur in your hair. And I say that because you're neutralizing longer than you are relaxing. So for me, I relax longer and then I neutralize just a little bit less than my relaxer session. So that's what works for me. If you are relaxing, you know, at a quick time frame, so 10 to 15 minutes, and then you're doing the 5-5-10, that could cause an issue. That could cause a little bit more texture to remain in the hair, because neutralizing that intensely can bring back texture, and it really does. It brings back the elasticity back in the hair. It removes all traces of the relaxer. So just be careful. Not sure if this has happened to anybody, but I just want to put it out there. If you're relaxing very, very fast and then you're neutralizing for a long period of time, it could cause more texture to remain in the hair, if that makes sense. And obviously, the only way to correct under-processed hair is to do a corrective relaxer. So what is a corrective relaxer? A corrective is basically correcting the under-processed hair. So you want to go over the kinkier areas with relaxer, whether it's 6 to 8 weeks or your next relaxer session, and you just want to go over those kinkier areas with the relaxer. I always suggest waiting 6 to 8 weeks if possible. If it's extremely unmanageable, wait the 6 to 8 weeks. If not, you can bear it, you can manage, you know, you're still good. Wait to your next relaxer session and then tackle everything one time. So the steps that you basically take is do your new growth first, because that's a virgin hair. It needs to be processed. It's never been processed before. It needs more time. And then you want to move on to the under-processed areas. So whether that's your nape or the front of your hair, and just apply the relaxer as you see. It may not be as visible. You could spray some water so you can see those areas a little bit better, and then apply the relaxer, smooth as much as you need to, depending on the straightness that you want. And then you rinse it out. So you rinse out your relaxer, neutralize as usual, and then move on to deep conditioning, etc. So in a nutshell, that's how you do a corrective relaxer. I mean, it can be a little stressful because you're applying it to already relaxed hair. So I would say go to a professional, seek out someone that you trust, whether it be a stylist, hairdresser, someone you know that can perform that chemical service, because you don't want to have any issues. You don't want to cause further damage to your hair. All right, guys, so that is it. Those are all of my tips in terms of how to prevent under-processed hair and how to correct it. I've had my fair share of under-processed hair in the past year or so, and it hasn't been fun, to say the least. It's very discouraging, unmotivating. You just feel like your style challenge. You don't want to see your hair. You don't want to deal with your hair, okay? I know I've been there, and just sharing these tips I think will help. It's helped me, and I'm still going to be using all of these tips as well because they work. So if you've had any issues with having under-processed hair, challenges with it, or what has helped you correct it, leave your comment down below. I would love to hear it, and hopefully it will help someone else. Be sure to like this video, subscribe of course, and I'll see you guys in the next one.